Surprisingly, over 90% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button. It motivates us to keep creating and helps us never miss an upload. And you'll never miss a story again. It all started with a simple message. Hey, can we talk? After everything, after the lies, the betrayal, the years spent rebuilding, Michael Carter never thought he'd hear from Allison again. She left him once, cheated with his best friend, destroyed their marriage in ways he couldn't even put into words. And yet, there it was, a message that took him back to a place he never wanted to revisit. The night it all began wasn't stormy or dramatic. The sky was clear, the usual dull city haze hanging over Los Angeles like a blanket. Michael had just returned home from another long shift at the agency, where he worked as a creative director. Long hours, burnt coffee, and the achy back that came with sitting too long in an aging ergonomic chair. His life had become predictable, stable. He was married to Allison for 7 years. No kids, just a home, 2 dogs, Ranger and Miles, and a shared Netflix account. Until that night. He walked into the house and felt it immediately. Something was off. It wasn't a burglary. Number. It was something much heavier. The kind of silence that seemed to hold a warning, a sign that something had already been broken, and there was no turning back. Allison was sitting on the edge of their bed. Her hands were folded in her lap, like she was about to give a eulogy. Her mascara was smudged, but not from crying. Number. She'd cried earlier. This was the after, when guilt runs out of tears. I slept with someone, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Michael just stared at her. No reaction. His brain refused to process the words. Who? He asked finally, his voice hollow. Ethan, she replied, like it was just another detail in her day. The name hit him like a sledgehammer. Ethan, his best friend, his college roommate, the man who had been his best man at their wedding. Michael didn't scream. He didn't cry. Instead, he stood there, frozen. Then, without another word, he walked out. He drove aimlessly for 2 hours, ate a cold cheeseburger in a diner he couldn't even name, and came back home to sleep on the couch. It wasn't noble, it wasn't strong, it was just shock. The next morning, she tried to talk, tried to explain. He didn't say a word. By that evening, he had packed a small suitcase, taken the dogs, and left. The divorce was final in 6 months. The betrayal was public. Ethan was erased from Michael's life. His family stopped inviting Allison to holiday dinners. His friends apologized. But it didn't matter. He was a ghost, moving through life on autopilot, living in a world that didn't feel real. But then the silence turned into something else. Whispers. Rumors. Turns out, Ethan wasn't the only one. A year later, Michael found out that Allison had been unfaithful with multiple people. Friends, coworkers, even a neighbor. She called it a phase. Her friends called it finding herself. Michael called it the end. And so, he buried the pain. He buried it in workouts, boxing, therapy. He stopped drinking, cut out sugar, adopted a strict diet, hit the gym like it owed him money. His body transformed, lean, strong, and confident. But it wasn't just his body that was changing. His mind was healing too. His revenge body became a legend among his circle. But his real healing wasn't just physical. It was strategic. He rebuilt slowly. He started freelancing, built a design firm from scratch, worked with small clients at first, then bigger names. Eventually, a viral ad campaign landed him on Forbes' Creators to Watch list. Allison had mocked his dreams once. Now, he was living them. Still, something was missing. Peace, closure. It wasn't healing that Michael needed. It was accountability, and she never gave it. But life, as it always does, had one more twist. 3 years after the divorce, Allison texted him out of nowhere. Hey, can we talk? Michael stared at the message. His thumb hovered over the phone screen, unsure. He hadn't thought about her in months, not like this. She'd left. She'd destroyed everything. And now, after everything he'd built, after everything he'd overcome, she wanted to talk? Why? He replied, his fingers steady. Allison responded almost immediately. It's not what you think. Michael almost laughed. After everything, this was her opener? He tossed his phone onto the kitchen counter, feeling like it might infect him. But curiosity, that ever-present claw, got to him. Later that night, after a quiet dinner and a walk with the dogs through the moonlit neighborhood, he picked it up again. Her next message blinked on the screen. I made mistakes. I know that now. But can we just meet once? For closure? Closure. That word again. Like it was something you could hand over on a napkin. Michael didn't respond for a week. Not until Thursday night, after too much coffee and a brief stalk through her social media. Photos of her looking tired, older, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. Finally, he replied. Saturday, 2 p.m. The park near Melrose. He arrived early, as he always did. Watched the fountain, watched couples walk by, their arms intertwined, unaware of the bitterness that had once been his life. Then he saw her. Allison walked slowly toward him. Same eyes, but everything else looked dimmed. Time had eroded her glow. Not in a cruel way, but honestly. She wore a long beige coat. Her hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail. Her expression was rehearsed. Fragile. I'm Mike, she said, her voice wavering slightly. He nodded, his eyes cold. You wanted closure, so talk, he said flatly. She blinked, caught off guard. I don't know where to start, she admitted. Try the truth, he replied. She winced. Then she began, telling him everything. About Ethan, how she'd sabotaged their marriage, how she had cheated on him not just once, but repeatedly. Friends, neighbors, co-workers. She had been living a double life. I thought you'd hate me forever, she whispered. But I kept seeing your name everywhere, your company, the ads, the awards. You look good, Mike. You always had that quiet charm. Michael looked away. You didn't come here to compliment me. Get to the point. She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. I was wrong about everything. I sabotaged what we had because I didn't believe I deserved it. You were stable, safe, but I was addicted to chaos. I wanted excitement, attention. I mistook that for love. Michael's jaw clenched. So you lit a marriage on fire because you wanted to feel something? I wanted to feel wanted, she whispered. There it was, the honesty, the ugly core. She reached into her purse and pulled out a worn envelope. Inside were old photos. Them on the beach, at the lake, laughing in New Orleans. I still look at these, she said, her voice trembling. I dream about us sometimes, the real us, before I ruined it. Michael studied the photos, his face unreadable. Then he handed them back to her. You didn't just ruin it, he said quietly. You destroyed it. You chose lies, repeatedly. And now you want closure? I want redemption, she said softly. He shook his head. You don't get to ask for that. Not after what you did. Her eyes widened in desperation. I know I'm too late, but I'd give anything to undo it. Anything. There was a silence between them, thick, smothering. Then Michael smiled. It wasn't kind, it was calculated. Anything? She froze. Yes, she whispered. Michael stood up, his movements slow and deliberate. Good, because I'm going to give you exactly what you gave me. Something unforgettable. Her eyes widened, confusion flooding her face. What do you mean? He put on his sunglasses, his face unreadable. Wait and see. And with that, he walked away, leaving her sitting there, clutching old memories, the start of his real revenge already in motion. Michael's footsteps echoed in the park as he walked away, the air crisp with the beginnings of fall. His heart didn't race. There was no adrenaline rush, no desire to scream or shout. He had already crossed the threshold of anger and hurt a long time ago. Now, it was a different feeling, one of complete detachment. He had learned a long time ago that the quietest revenge wasn't the loudest one. It was the kind that you could watch unfold from a distance, while the other person spiraled. That night after the encounter with Allison, He returned to his apartment and opened his old Dropbox folder, the one he'd titled Us. It wasn't for nostalgia, not anymore. It was for intel. He scanned through old photos, texts, and the messages she had sent him. Messages where she denied what he later found out was the truth. It was a collection of her lies, her manipulation, and her gaslighting. He read through them all with clinical detachment, each word feeling like a ghost he had long since exorcised from his life. But now, he wasn't just looking for the past. He was looking for the pieces of himself she had tried to break. Michael opened a new file on his desktop. He named it The Restoration Project. This wasn't about hurting her, he thought. It wasn't about making her pay for the pain she had caused him, even though it felt good to imagine her suffering. This was about restoring the version of himself that she had tried to shatter. And if he could shake her in the process, well, that would just be an added bonus. He had a plan, and this was only the beginning. He reached out to Claire Reynolds, a former coworker, one of the very few people who had warned him about Allison before everything had gone south. Claire was an observer, a quiet presence in their office. Back then, she had seen the cracks in Michael's marriage before he had even noticed them. Now, she was a senior strategist at a rising PR firm, and Michael needed her help. He messaged her, "Claire, need 15 minutes in person." "You'll want to hear this." Claire replied almost instantly, "Name a place." They met the next morning at a minimalist cafe downtown. Claire walked in, confidently, wearing a sharp blazer that contrasted Michael's more casual look. She raised an eyebrow. "You look dangerous," she said with a smirk. "I like it." Michael nodded once, not bothered by the compliment. "I want your help," he said, his tone steady. Claire leaned back, folding her arms. "I figured this is about her, right?" Michael nodded. "It's about how to deal with Allison. But not in the way you think." He laid it all out for her, how Allison had reached out after 3 years, how she begged for closure, how she was now spiraling. But Michael wasn't walking away this time. He wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of thinking she could undo the destruction she had caused. Claire thought for a moment, tapping her pen against her lip. "So, you don't want to embarrass her. You want to expose the gap between the fantasy she sold and the life she destroyed." She looked at him, eyes sharp. "I like it." Michael smiled. "Exactly." By the end of the meeting, they had a plan. Phase 1 was simple. Rebrand Michael's personal profile. Not fake, just polished. Claire's team would update his online presence. New photos, updated bios, press releases highlighting his recent successes. Old colleagues would reshare his work, showing how far he had come, how successful he had become. It wasn't just revenge. It was showcasing everything Allison had thrown away. It was spotlighting the life she could have had, but didn't deserve. A week later, Michael's profile was a reflection of everything he had achieved in the years since the divorce. His personal brand became a beacon of success and strength, while Allison, who had once mocked his dreams, faded into the background. The second phase of the plan was more ambitious. Claire invited him to speak at a creative tech summit in the city, one that she was moderating. The twist? Allison's firm was sponsoring one of the booths at the summit. It wasn't just any event. It was the kind of event that would put Michael right in the spotlight, front and center. And Allison? She'd be standing just a few feet away, watching him from the sidelines. Michael walked into that conference like he owned the air around him. He was dressed in a custom-tailored suit, his hair freshly styled, his face unburdened by the past. No ring, no bitterness, just pure presence. He exuded confidence, and he wasn't about to hide it. The people in the room could feel it. But more importantly, he knew that Allison would feel it too. She was there, standing at her company's table. She looked out of place, trying too hard to look younger than she felt. Beside her stood a junior exec, looking uncomfortable and out of place. But Michael only had eyes for her. Their eyes met across the room. She froze. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. But Michael? He didn't flinch. He gave her a small, polite nod, then kept walking. Claire introduced him on stage. "Our next speaker is a visionary in branding and emotional recovery through storytelling. Please welcome Michael Carter. The crowd applauded as Michael stepped onto the stage, his gaze never straying from Allison, who stood at the back of the room, pale and stunned. Michael's keynote wasn't about betrayal. It wasn't about her, not directly, but his words were surgical. Sometimes, he said, his voice calm and steady, we're forced to become the version of ourselves someone else was too small to believe in. And when that happens, you don't just move on. You evolve. You build. And eventually, they see you again. But by then, you're not the same. The room clapped. Allison stood still, staring, her face unreadable. After the talk, she waited by the exit, no longer pretending to be the confident woman she once was. Michael walked past her, his gaze never meeting hers. No anger, no cruelty. Just complete, calculated detachment. That night after the summit, Allison texted him, "You were incredible, I'm proud of you." But Michael didn't reply. Not once. 3 weeks passed in silence. Michael didn't break. But Allison? She started spiraling. It began small. Likes on his old posts, anonymous comments under his videos. But then came the email. The subject line read, "Please." It was the kind of message that felt desperate, a final plea. But Michael had already moved past her orbit. He didn't need closure. He didn't need anything from her. He was executing a lesson. Phase 3 was already in motion. Michael reconnected with Alex and Diane, a couple who had distanced themselves from him after the divorce. They had been neutral, swayed by Allison's version of the story. But now, time had chipped away at those lies. Over dinner at a rooftop lounge downtown, Diane spoke first. "We should have called you years ago," she said. "She told us you were controlling, emotionally closed. She said you never made her feel desired." Michael smiled gently. "She told me I was too emotional, that I smothered her." Funny how both can be true and they're both lies. Alex leaned in. "We didn't know about Ethan, or the others." Diane added, "She told us it was one mistake. Just Ethan." "We believed her." Michael nodded. "I don't blame you. I blamed myself for a long time too." That night he gave them something they couldn't take back. Honesty. He told them the truth, not with bitterness, but with clarity. And in doing so, he began reclaiming the truth that Allison had poisoned. As the weeks went by, Michael's life continued to flourish. The pain of the past was no longer something he carried with him. It was something he had strategically transformed into growth, success, and freedom. But he knew the final act had to be played carefully, because closure wasn't something that came easily, especially for someone like Allison. The plan continued to unfold in phases, each step moving Michael further away from the person he once was and closer to the man he had become. Phase 4 of the plan had been set into motion the moment Michael knew it was time to expose the truth. It wasn't about revenge anymore, not in the petty, vindictive way that Allison probably imagined. It was about showing her, showing everyone exactly what she had tried to destroy. Claire had helped orchestrate a video that went viral, but it wasn't about Michael. It wasn't about Allison. It was about something bigger, the rise and fall of emotional branding in modern relationships. A subtle but sophisticated look at betrayal in professional partnerships. The video wasn't directly about Allison, but it didn't need to be. The people who knew the story would recognize the pieces of their own lives, and someone had sent it to her. That night, as the rain fell against her apartment window like judgment, Allison watched the video in silence. Her kids were at her mother's house. Ethan had long since blocked her on social media, and her job, once secure, was now a sinking ship. She had no idea how deep she was falling until the video, shared among her colleagues, became the trigger for everything she had feared. The message that came afterward was inevitable. It was from her boss. Michael's firm was being considered for a consulting partnership with their company. Her firm had seen the video and now wanted Michael's name attached to it. This was a branding dream, they said. But it meant that Allison would have to sit across from him in pitch meetings. Her pride cracked. Her world began to crumble with a noise that only she could hear. That night, she called his voicemail. "It's me again," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I know I don't have a right to ask, but I need to see you one last time. Please, I'm not okay. I haven't been for a long time. I see now what I lost, and it's killing me." Michael didn't respond. Instead, he sent one text. "Meet me at the place where we first said, 'I love you.'" Saturday, 6 p.m. The setup for the final blow had been set in motion. Michael arrived at the cliffside lookout in Laguna Beach before she did. The view was breathtaking, the ocean whispering below as the sun began its slow descent. He sat on the bench where they had once carved their initials, a memory that had long been erased from his heart, but one that still held meaning to her. Time and salt water had worn it down, just like the memory of their love. Allison arrived right on time. She looked tired, her face lined with the exhaustion of the years that had passed since they had last spoken. She walked slowly toward him, as if she knew what was coming. She sat beside him without a word, the silence between them heavy, like a forgotten weight. "I still remember that night," she whispered. "You brought me here after that stupid diner fight. You said, 'I don't want perfect, I just want honest.'" Michael stared at the ocean, his face unreadable. "You remember that?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I never forgot it," he said quietly. She looked away. "But I wasn't honest. I was weak. I let them fill my head with lies. I was selfish. And now," she paused, her voice breaking, "now I wake up and wish I'd done everything differently." Michael turned, finally looking at her. His voice was calm but stern. "Do you love me?" She nodded, her tears falling freely now. "More than I ever did. More than I deserved to." He leaned closer, his words steady, precise. "Then tell me everything. Every name. Every betrayal. Every lie. Say it all right now." Allison trembled. Her breath hitched in her chest. But she knew deep down that there was no turning back. She reached into her purse and pulled out the old envelope. It was filled with the names she had hidden for so long, the people she had betrayed, the lies she had woven to justify her actions. One by one, she listed them. Friends, neighbors, people they both knew. She confessed to using his insecurities against him, to letting her friends manipulate her. She admitted to sleeping with Ethan, while Michael was out of town for a funeral. When she finished, Michael stood up. "Thank you," he said, his voice measured. Her eyes widened in confusion. "Wait, what does that mean?" He looked down at her, the finality of his words hanging in the air, like an executioner's sentence. "It means I finally have peace. You gave me what I never had, the truth. You'll live with it. I won't." And then, the final blow. "I'm getting married." Her eyes widened and her breath caught in her throat. "What?" Michael pulled out his phone and opened a photo. He showed her a picture of himself with Rebecca, a strong, fiercely kind woman he had met at the summit. She was the opposite of Allison in every way. Genuine, loving, supportive. The photo showed them smiling, Rebecca's hand on his chest. There was a ring on her finger. Allison's lips quivered. "You brought me here to tell me that?" Michael nodded. "You said you wanted to see me. You wanted closure. Well, here it is." Allison's face crumpled. The tears flowed, but they were different this time. They weren't the sobs of someone who had been caught. They were the sobs of someone mourning something that was already dead. Michael walked away, each step feeling lighter than the last. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. Closure wasn't in her tears. It was in his choice to never chase them again. Back in the city, Michael's world had become fuller than it had ever been. He was free. He had finally moved on. And the life he had built was not just a life of progress. It was a life of meaning. Rebecca stood by him. not just as a partner, but as a symbol of everything he had fought for. She was real. She was fierce in her empathy and bold in her honesty. She made him feel loved, not because he had to earn it by suffering, but because she chose him for exactly who he was. They had met at the summit, sure, but it wasn't coincidence. It was timing. She had seen his keynote and been in the crowd. Afterward, she walked up to him and said one thing that changed everything. "I know the difference." They grew together, not out of need, but out of mutual respect and understanding. Their relationship wasn't built on the rubble of a broken past. It was built on trust, growth, and a shared future. One day, Michael proposed. They stood on a cliff just miles from where he had once ended things with Allison. He didn't prepare a speech. He didn't kneel. He simply said, "You're the calm after every storm, the peace I never thought I'd earn. Will you be my future?" Tears welled in Rebecca's eyes as she nodded. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Their moment went viral, not because they posted it, but because a stranger nearby filmed it and tagged Rebecca unknowingly. The video spread like wildfire, capturing the hearts of people who saw it as a symbol of what happens when you choose peace over pain, growth over guilt, grace over revenge. Allison saw it, of course. She even tried to comment, "Cherish him. He's rare." But Rebecca blocked her. Months later, Michael and Rebecca married in a quiet vineyard ceremony. There were 80 guests, candlelight, acoustic music, and laughter echoing through the vines. No one from Michael's past was invited. No family members who had ever doubted his worth, only those who saw him for who he had become. After the reception, Michael stood alone outside the venue, sipping wine and looking at the stars. Claire approached from behind. "So you finally won?" she asked, a teasing tone in her voice. Michael shook his head. "I didn't win. I escaped. That's better." They clinked glasses. "To never needing closure again," Claire said, and they drank to it.